Okay, let's move on to another thing, the relationship between Israel and Europe. What is Israel, according to your opinion? What is Israel doing right and what Europe do wrong? And why do you think Europe should learn from Israel and not vice versa? Because most of the elite intellectual, both in Israel and in Europe, think that we should learn more from Europe. The English version of Haaretz basically praise Angela Merkel, Barack Obama, and diminish all the native values, all the native Jewish values in Israel.
Well, I think it was Bob Kagan who said some years ago, that Europe believes it lives after history. It believes it's beyond wars, beyond conflict, beyond statehood, even beyond. It's forgotten the essential tragedy of human existence. Believes that it's got past it. And Israel doesn't have that amazing, what can you say it, delusion to live. We got an interruption off camera.
This is when your tech person.
That's when your tech person has, yeah, exactly. But thank you. You're very right. Israel doesn't have the opportunity to live in that delusion. So if you're a 21-year-old man or woman in the UK, you can believe that what matters most is your Instagram page, the way in which you present yourselves to your friends and others, the desire to get money, accrue some capital if you can, get on the housing ladder, and also that your society sort of owes you, and that if things are unfair, they should be addressed by the society, and that we can wage a war on unfairness. And that's why you hear Europeans saying things like, we must tackle hate. Oh, really? What are you going to do after you've defeated hate? Are you going to go on to sloth or gluttony or no chance of that? But it's this. I think a happy delusion, and Israelis at 20 and 21 are currently
in Gaza Strip.
In the Gaza Strip, it's so. I just wish that Europeans learn from Israel on these things, is that, when things are close to the boat, like, you do have to hit them back. And Europeans, like Americans, believe that it's sort of always going to go on like this. And I've never had that. And I don't especially know why I haven't, but I just don't think I ever had that delusion, or if I did, I had it for a matter of minutes as a child. But Israel lives in history. And Europeans, to a great extent, can't forgive Israel for that, because it then sees the country that lives in history as causing everyone else to have to live in history, or at risk of doing so. And that's a very a problem for Israel. It gets blamed by Europeans for having conflicts, for instance, for defending itself. May Europeans live in this luxury belief forever, but I suspect they won't.
By the way, I think what you just said is some of the reasons why we don't see many Israelis believing UFOs, because we don't need to invent enemies outside Earth's enemies. We have enough enemies just around. And
more than enough.
Yeah, more than enough. And I would like to ask you something about, things that you wrote in The Strange Death of Europe. The idea is that after World War II, we are not going to extend our fight to morality, to good versus evil, because if I go with my beliefs all the way, then it will become Nazi Germany. And, the relativism in your morality is something that is just against everything that Israel stands for. I think that the Jewish concept of morality is that sometimes power can be moral, even more moral than love. And I think that this is a very clear distinction. But Europe, Great Britain, we had Churchill versus Chamberlain. Churchill believes that he fought pure evil. So how come Britain became Chamberlain again?
I'm not sure if it's Chamberlain again. I just think that the history of the 20th century in Europe, as I say in The Strange Death of Europe, the Hebrew edition, I see it on the table, is that, thank you very much, show it for the camera. What I say there is that Europe almost destroyed itself and the world twice in one century, and that would weigh on anyone. And there's also that thing of, come on, we can't have to do this again, can we? And a lot of people felt that after the First World War. I mean, one of the reasons why there's a sort of slightly unfair rap given sometimes to some of the appeasers in the 30s and so on is that, there was and it was understandable that a generation that had gone through the trenches of World War I, or who lost their fathers in World War I, or saw a whole generation come back irreparably damaged in mind, body, and spirit, might want to avoid this ever happening again. Remember, the First World War, then known as the Great, what was meant to be the war to end all wars, and the idea you have to do it again so soon is something which of course people wanted to resist that as an idea. And I don't doubt that Israelis have the same thing. Again, we've got to do this. But yes, alas, it's not a choice.
Another thing that I think it differentiates the Jewish culture from both Islamic culture and Christian culture, the idea of asking questions, the idea of free speech that is inherently in the culture. We don't ask questions in Christianity. We are not allowed to ask questions in Islam. And maybe this is one of the things that, that is profoundly different in Israel versus you today, because
I don't know. I think that Christian culture certainly asks questions. I agree that Islamic culture, the nature of Islamic culture is submission to Allah. So I mean, of course that's, and inshallah, which is of course the soporific idea ever, which whatever is effectively. But I mean, I don't agree that there's a sort of theological explanation for it particularly, because I do see Israeli culture and European cultures, Western cultures being very similar, but at different speeds, you might say. Similar societies traveling at different speeds, and European society wants to continue to drive below the speed limit, and Israeli society doesn't have that option.
Okay, and what can we do? What can we do in order to help the European society, to push the...
I mean, I don't know if it's Israel's job to do that. Israel's job is to look after Israel. The Israeli government's job is to look after Israeli people.
But it's out of your job as the most prominent conservative journalist in the UK.
Well, I see my job as simply telling the truth as I see it, and writing about what I see and being as accurate in my analysis as possible. I would love Europeans to be more aware of the fact that what they're living in is a kind of holiday from reality, but it's more likely that events will wake them up to that fact than my writing, sad to say. I wrote The Strange Death of Europe 7 years ago now, came out 6 years ago. And since all my warnings, as far as I can see, with the exception of a small number of countries in Europe, everyone else put their foot on the accelerator of things like immigration, mass immigration, illegal immigration. Instead of strengthening their borders, they weakened them even more. Instead of strengthening their civil societies, they made them even weaker. And but that, as I've always said, will differ country by country. And some countries might be in a position to save themselves from becoming completely relativistic, and others will not.